I am Eyung. I work for the government. I'm from Government Technology Agency of Singapore, and do allow me to take a few tens of minutes to share with you some of our journey. In fact, it's a very memorable one for the past 1 year or so. So, in the government itself, of course, we are responsible and accountable to take care of our citizens, our residents during a crisis situation. So allow me to put a frame into my sharing. I use a very, very common frame out there, which is really about product, process, and people. So I'm going to share, aligning to these three broad principles. So GovTech Singapore has went through quite a journey of trying to see everything from a project into a product. So probably most of the participants in this forum are very familiar with things like, for example, in the case of a product, we want to focus more in terms of what is the outcome instead of what the output. And product also have more longevity in terms of timeline, and we also need to measure the product values, right, in terms of the value they can and impact they can create to the customers, to the business, so on and so forth. And last but not least, of course, that is the usual bit we understand about the whole product mindset. It is actually an iterative cycle of how do we continuously improve. So let me use that as a quick frame of share with you how everything gets started. In fact, interestingly, this is actually a very small starting point, but it also marks the beginning of the whole COVID war in Singapore. So the very first mission that we actually received was really this mission about Singapore government is going to give out free masks to the residents, and we need to quickly build a website to inform where to collect masks and stuff like that. So that to us is really a mission that we have to accomplish. But what probably the people in Singapore doesn't know is that, in fact, we received this mission only 1 day before the actual event. So which means that on the Sunday itself, Sunday morning, we have to start distributing masks to the citizens. So the day before, we need to start informing people where to collect the masks and stuff like that. So how do we make such a digital platform presence and to allow people to go according to what has been assigned and stuff like that? So that is where we started this journey. So 10 a.m. we start to receive this project brief, and then a lot of the questions start to come in, right? What is the domain name of the website? Where do we pull the data from? Blah, 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 and stuff like that. And actually, we struggled quite a bit. And until the very midnight, that very midnight, we finally found out, right, that all the data actually reside, and in Singapore context, because they are different districts, right? So all the data are basically residing on each of the district, like the Facebook page, so on and so forth. So that is the best thing we have. So to be able to arrive at that kind of mission, and this is the kind of data we have. I mean, they are not very good quality data, but then at that point of time, that is the best thing we can have, right? What we have on the plate. So we decided that, hey, there may be within the next 10 hours or so, the things that we can build is something that we let the residents to key in the postal code, like the one you see at the middle of the screen. And then by doing that, we will just have a compilation of all the images, all the posters, and then we will just show it as it is. It is such a simple thing like that. But the key thing is that is already 12 a.m. at midnight, and then the website got to be used on the very second day. So this is how it actually looked like in the office itself. So we call back three engineers, and come back and quickly try to hack out whatever that can be used. And at the very morning, we also trigger our security group to do all the pen tests and stuff like that. But then at 8 a.m. in the morning, before we even share out the website, then we start to get a lot of social media posts and talk about like, oh, there's a fake website and stuff like that. Then we also start to realize other problems, like because we never put in the masthead accordingly, we need to put in the agency logo and stuff like that to give the credibility to the product, and so on and so forth. And finally, at 10 a.m. that morning, I think it's really the first time in the government context that we launch a website in, well within 12 hours. So after that, the journey continues. And then based on this product, we found out that, hey, because it is really a rush out work, then we can only accommodate like one image, per search. Then we basically also call back a lot of volunteers and try to stitch the images together and so on and so forth. But all of us just want to come together and play our part to make sure that we have a usable product to the residents and citizens themselves. So this is a very quick journey, right? But if there is one thing that we learn throughout this journey, be it the part about, even though it's a rush out work, be it the part about how do we give a credibility to a product that we build, be it the part about how do we be able to cut short the kind of interaction that the citizen need to have to get to the information they need, which is essentially, in this case, is the product value itself. It taught us one very important lesson, which is really about, as a product, perhaps the most single important factor in our case is the service delivery, is really about communication, right? And in fact, from there, our journey continues, right? How can we then make this important communication bit even more effective? That is how we try to evolve to the next stage, which is really about structured data. Now, in Singapore context, if you are familiar in the previous state in Singapore, you know that a lot of these distribution ops are actually facilitated by a different unit. We call them a different community center. Each of the community center, a lot of time, it really very much depends on the digital literacy of the staff there. And it is actually part of their job to create all these kind of posters, which basically carry an information and inform the residents where to collect a certain stuff. But here comes the problem, right? Because there is no consistent way of communication, because it very much depending on the UX writing skill, the design skill, UX skill of each of the different CC, I mean the community club, community center. So there are a lot of information gap. So in order to be able to drive a better communication, then as a product team, we continue to brainstorm and we think that, hey, maybe what we need to do as the next step is really about how can we provide an appealing product so that all the public officers will be willing to use this product, but yet at the same time, at the front end, I'm solving a problem to the citizens by providing a consistent look and feel, consistent UX representation. So this is where we are. We come up with something, we call it a poster generator. It is not rocket science, but what it basically does is that now I turn to the public officer and go and tell them that, hey, instead of you yourself have to use the PowerPoint or whatever tool, Photoshop tool, to come up with some of these poster by yourself, how about I just provide you with a very simple form interface. You just fill in whatever collection information details you want, and by pressing one button, then immediately on the right side of the screen, you can get a consistent poster. And the poster itself, you can print out to be used on the different of these government housing block. You can also, because the format of that image itself is also sort of compatible with the digital bulletin board in all those housing estate. So with that in mind, I have a tool to bring the public service on board to use the tool, but yet at the same time, I'm able to provide a more consistent experience to the citizens who needs to use these particular services. So that itself, it is a very small story to tell, but it sort of symbolizes one of the very important mindset that we have in fighting this COVID war, which is really this thing about TechStep. Now, we used to think that experience side of things and the more engineering TechStep side of things could belong to two very different worlds. But I think if anything we have learned from this COVID war is really about a lot of this important lesson, a lot of this effort, we want to be able to TechStep dice them, right? So that a lot of the important lesson, a lot of the important implementation, we can keep on reusing. And that would allow us to respond fast in the case of a COVID situation. So here will lead me to my next topic, which is really about the process itself. I think since you sign up for this conference, things like design thinking and stuff like that will be very you'll be very familiar with some of this topic, right? So on the top right corner, what you can see, I believe, would be this. This is our own adaptation of design thinking approach. In our case, we call it a digital product life cycle. I'm sorry. But if anything, it aligns very much the design thinking principle of we have to start with the user observation, discovery journey, then we ideate. After that, we do a small prototyping, and after that, we send it to MVP, right? So at the bottom, this is the part about, these are the modules that we have come. So for example, on the left, on the left corner, what you see, this location-based search. In fact, that is a module that we have used it so often in so many of the distribution ops in government, be it the mask, be it the sanitizer, so on and so forth. The basic authentication module is another one, right? I think Singapore has a famous initiative in Trace Together, right? So this is the baseline module behind. After we solve a lot of the issue, we make it a very solid tech stack, right? Make sure the user data are as accurate as possible. And this module is being used to support not only Trace Together, but also things like exit pass system, which is really another initiative in the Singapore government, which we are trying to help to fight the outbreak of COVID situation in the DOM itself. Just now I mentioned about poster generator. And last but not least, there's this benefit engine, which basically trying to imitate, like, we want to help the people in this country. We want to provide a lot of benefit and stuff like that. But how do we provide a most possible user-friendly possible experience for the people, right? Out of so many benefits and schemes, we just get the people to answer top 5 to top 7 questions. Then immediately, you are being provided with a customized, with a personalized list of benefits that you can zoom into and apply. Along the way, in that better word, we also sometimes joke around and say that, because in the COVID situation, we have to really run very fast. And we are almost like building a plane while we are already in the air, right? So that is of course driven by the demand, right? But to allow that to happen and to allow the product to be able to continuously improving, we need to have some kind of very good feedback mechanism, which is why in the Singapore government context, actually the feedback mechanism, we have already built it as part of the TechStep. What does it actually mean to any of the product owner? What it means is that if you are running a Singapore government touch point, the only thing you need to do is that you just add 2 lines of JavaScript code at the top of your source code, right? Then immediately you are being exposed to a dashboard, which you are able to turn on and turn off and customize the question through something we call it a WOGA sentiment, which is actually this little smiley face there, you see it, right? So from the point of time that you want to have a feedback mechanism on your digital touch point to the point that the feedback mechanism is already started working on your website, it takes well less than an hour. So this tool, this powerful tool, has been used to power more than 2,000 of the Singapore government touch point. Now, this is some of the these are some of the real feedback that we have gotten, right? In fact, even just 3 phase of the mask go wear collection exercise, we have received more than 10,000 rating. We have received more than 1,300 actionable feedback. And that is the very powerful feedback loop that allows us to continuously iterate our product. At the same time, I want to bring up sideway into this, to us, very important topic, because in the Singapore context, we are a multiracial society. So based on some of these very authentic from the ground feedback, one thing is definitely about the barrier of the language. So we often receive feedback like this. For example, I cannot read English. If your website is only made available in English, and how is it inclusive to me, so on and so forth, right? So with that, I also must say that in the past history, the kind of translation quality also matters a lot, because there are a few incidents of because people just simply use machine translation, right? Then it ends up with some misunderstanding across the different groups and stuff like that. So at the back end, what we are trying to drive is that we want to have good translation. In fact, just a simple content like this, if you put four key languages together, it is actually a hell lot of work to actually put things together and make sure the accuracy is there. So of course, there are many ways to be able to drive it, but in order to really drive it as part of the very fast product movement, right? We need to be iterate on the fly. We need to, like what I mentioned, we need to even build a plane while it's in the air. We really need people that is embedded into the team. So we can only rely on, it cannot be an external, commercial dealing where, there's a time lag, and it has to be act as part of the agile team itself. So our main mode of solutioning this is really to go through a lot of volunteers as well as part-time translators. So at the back end, we also prepared some of these. If we all assess that this inclusivity is one key issue we want to solve, then obviously we need to invest into it. So that's why we also have developed some of the TechStep that allow us to do it, so that at whole nation level, we have a more holistic position to make the whole Singapore government digital service to be a more inclusive one. So these are some of the screenshots that how do we allow translation to happen without burdening the translator too much, look into compare different Excel spreadsheet, and so on and so forth. We even come up with a process, right? In the traditional sense, process might sound like a bit old school, a bit more lengthened, a bit more like, bureaucratic and stuff like that. But in the kind of fast response kind of environment, in fact, in our humble view, process is getting even more important. Because just when everything starts to happen from here and there and new situations start to appear, if you do not have a process to make sure that things are happening in order, then the more likely that some of the mistake will be made, right? So these are some of the products that have benefited, right, during the COVID situation, be it support GoWare, be it some of these safe entry, be it token GoWare, which is a website for people to know where to collect the Trace Together token, and My Legacy, and so on and so forth. Now, so this is a bit about, other than what I mentioned just now, there are also other kind of processes that we put in place. So for example, on this, you can see there's a heat map overlaid on the website. So that is our new HDB. HDB is basically our new, our HDB is basically Singapore Housing Board. So recently they launched a new housing portal. So all of this design work, before we even send the work into development, we will basically pipe them through some usability testing sessions. So for some of the session, we will even use some eye tracking tool to make sure that people are paying attention to the right thing, to the thing that we want them to pay attention to, and to make sure that the user journey is consistent. And at the bottom, that will lead me to tell another little story. The team was commissioned to by ICA. ICA is basically our immigration office, right? So we're called in to really revamp a digital service on the NRIC, basically our ID registration. So when the team went in with the same kind of design thinking process, we found out that one of the issues is really about, because on our physical ID card, there is this one column that we need the people to put in the ethnic name. But the fact is that a lot of the youngsters today, when they go to the website and try to consume these services, their computer or their phone, mobile devices, they do not come pre-installed with the ethnic keyboard. So the current process is that basically they have to write on a piece of paper, what is the ethnic name, right? And then they have to take a photo, and then they have to upload the photo and send to the backend officer for them to try to recognize what is your name and try to digitize for you. And sometimes this process can ding dong for a few rounds, and people might not be able to read your handwriting, so on and so forth. So with some of these things, in order to make the service more inclusive, so what the designer and engineers decided to do is that they come up with something, they call it ethnic keyboard, which is a soft keyboard. What it means is that now, if you go to our ICA website, in the column of ethnic name entry, you just have to click one button, and without installing anything on your hardware device, on your mobile device or on your computer, you are able, this any keyboard are able to appear on your computer, and you are going to use your mouse to go and do any name kind of entry. And on the right-hand side is basically when you try to enter Chinese character, because it is more stroke driven. So basically we implement a handwriting keypad, right? Use a mouse, try to write the word, right? To provide them with another way of ethnic name entry, even without installing any ethnic keyboard on your device. So things like these are some of the things that, because you put in a process in place, then these are the things that will naturally appear along the journey, and it will holistically make your service more inclusive. Last but not least, of course, is the bit about, to us, what matters to us most is really about the people, right? It begins with empathy, just like any UX 101 lesson taught us. And what is even more important is that it's a team sport, because a lot of these things, you need to support each other. And it is also very important in our sort of like journey to allow using a positive behavior to encourage positive behavior. So what you see immediately on the right-hand side, what you see is that it is basically our in-house ceremony. Whenever we have people be able to practice the kind of extra mile for the inclusivity, accessibility, and stuff like that, we will have a session to call out this kind of positive behavior, because end of the day, even as the manager of the team, there is no way for me to drive every single bit of my digital product to make it even more inclusive and more user-friendly. It has to be the people driving the product moving forward. Now, I'm going to sum up by just putting maybe 2 or 3 slides. So especially because we are standing at a national level, and because we are doing service delivery during a crisis period, so naturally there will be some additional requirement: the speed of execution, accuracy, reusability, scalability, so on and so forth. So that is the part I want to call out, that there is a technical module, just like I mentioned, about the React GoWare, which is really, last time it takes me probably 1 day, 2 days, including security, maybe 1 week, to make sure that I come up with a information distribution website, right? But now, because I have a tech stack like that, the whole effort required is cut down into a few hours. But what is even more important is that along the way, we will solve issues like, for example, accessibility. For example, some of them, the browser isn't compatible, so immediately it will affect some of the user experience, right? So with that, once we have solved once, we code it into the tech stack itself. So it also means that in the next time, when I go and deploy this tech stack, right, all the issues are already resolved. Same thing, right? I just put in more example. Last time, there are some data accuracy issue, whether I never considered this group of user, I need to import a new set of database. Once I solve it once, and this set of tech stack is going to support multiple kind of initiative, and so on and so forth. So essentially, the message I want to bring across is really about this kind of usability, inclusivity is not just a designer job. It can be very engineering job as well. It can be very tech stack driven as well. In fact, by combining them, your solution will be super powerful. My second last slide. So this is really about, this is actually a hard lesson learned as well. A lot of time, as a fellow designer, when you design a certain solution, you just try to think for the direct user, end user, who is the citizen themselves, and so on and so forth. But a lot of time in reality, you also need, especially if there is a service provider standing at the middle, it is also equally important for your solution to be appealing to the service provider. Because if not, if there's no value prop for, if let's say you're benefiting the end user, but you are making the service provider to do doubly hard, in fact, chances are they are not going to pick up your solution. And at the end of the day, the impact of your product won't be able to outreach to the citizens themselves. So on the left-hand side is basically, a lot of initiative, in fact, surprisingly, is not just to serve the citizen. We want to help the elderly who's staying alone, right, in Singapore. In fact, instead of providing a direct digital tool to the elderly themselves, which obviously it does not make a lot of sense, in fact, we are helping the service provider to make their job easier so that they can provide a better service to them. So on the left-hand side is basically some customer relationship management system to help us to facilitate this whole thing about tele ops, since we can't get to see each other that often. The middle part is the keyboard itself, as I mentioned, because now I don't need to have so many rounds of, to and fro. People can just key in the thing itself. So basically 80% of the time, people get the name correct, right? It's saving everyone's time. So there is also appealing to the service provider. On the right-hand side, of course, on top of the digital solution itself, we also have some of the tools that help the service providers at one glance to know that whether the data integrity, everything is there, so that they can also, in return, provide a better experience to the front-end citizen. So this is my last slides. There are also other things that we have done. When you want to do usability and accessibility at a national level, we have also quite a bit of progress when we combine the design skill as well as the engineering skill. So here what you can see is that we have done a lot of automation integration with a lot of the accessibility evaluation skill, accessibility evaluation tool, as well as some of the SEO tool and so on and so forth. And once we onboard the government agency website, we schedule this set of tools to run automatically without anyone to trigger anything behind the scene. So you might be a fellow service provider, public officer who is maintaining a particular website, but every Monday, you're going to receive a report to say that which part of your screen, maybe this part of the screen, the contrast is not strong enough, so it disobeys some of the accessibility principle and stuff like that. Can you please fix it and stuff like that? So this will bring me also to an important point on the right-hand side, which is about we don't just condemn you, but we also advise you like what are some of the improvement that you can make, right? These are the failing element and how can you fix it? So we try to reposition the whole thing into something more positive, and then we improve together. And we don't wait until citizen complain, then only we do certain things. So with that, thank you for being here with me. I hope I don't bore you too much, but essentially, I try to wrap around 3 key principles. First, we think iteratively, and what is the outcome, what is the value I can bring to the user in terms of the product mindset. Second, I have a process in place. No matter how hectic the situation is, we have a process to try to drive this set of design thinking approach to make sure that we try to capture more pain points that we never captured before. And last but not least, we heavily rely on people to help us to push the ground, to put things together, to drive a better services together as one government. Thank you very much. And that's my sharing. I hope you'll find it useful. Thank you.